So Pat, what would you tell a team up 15 in a finals game and you see the momentum starting to shift in a huddle?
I'm not going to answer that question. I'm not in the huddle. You know, I mean, it's always in those situations. You know, when you're plus. I looked at the clock and I said there were 7 minutes. You know, I think everybody in the arena felt good about where we were at that time, but that just always tells you that you don't know you're ever going to win a game until you win it. I don't care how much you're ahead or how much you're behind. Definitely it was a very disappointing ending that night.
How concerned are you about what's going on right now with the labor talks, and how much does it influence what you think?
I can't speak for that. I really can't, because I don't know if you say anything about it. He does lay down some heavy-duty fines. These aren't like technical fouls or the old fines that I used to get. I used to take willingly, but I'm not going to take this hit. So, but I do think they're working hard at it. That's all I can say.
Pat, were you tempted during the season to tinker a little bit? And I know you added Bibby and Dampier, but anything more? Were you tempted, or did you think because we aren't whole without Mike and Udonis, I have to get a look at this thing? What did you think?
I think that's one thing, Chris, that you hit on. And I don't like to make excuses. We don't. You got to win with what you have. Not having Mike and Udonis really all season long really had an impact on the team in a lot of ways. Mostly in the rotations and guys that are some of the time in the rotation, some of the time out. But hypothetically, if you can go back and say that, like Dwayne, LeBron, and Chris, those two players could have played 80 games and would have had the normal hurts, but to really be injured, seriously injured like they were, I think really hurt us and hurt the continuity of where the team could have gone. So as far as tinkering with the team, I mean, we really didn't have much to tinker with or assets to tinker with at the trading deadline. So things will begin to change, and we'll find out what the rules are going to be, and then we'll go from there. But that I think more than anything else took away from the real continuity of how coach could meld other guys into the team. And it was huge, and then you can see how important they were when both of them were healthy. Probably is one of the reasons why we made it to the finals.
You mentioned Eric earlier. Have you guys discussed anything long term with his contract situation, and where do you stand with your year-to-year agreement with
Everything is moving forward on the same basis. Vicky just took off on Saturday. I met with him before that. We didn't really talk about it, but definitely we're going to bring Eric back. From that standpoint, that's how I feel about it. As far as any kind of long-term situations, that has not been discussed.
Pat, you went basically veteran to complement those guys. Even Bibby Arroyo to start. I mean, is there any thought, after having seen that play out for a whole year, that athleticism, you might even want to add more athleticism just to create the dynamic, maybe be the most athletic team in the league or what have you? Any thought to sort of changing that up?
I think Dallas was older than we were, weren't they?
Yeah.
I think Dallas was actually older than we were, and the most athletic team probably that we played, Chicago. But yes, you do want to marry experience with athleticism, and we will continually try to find one or two young players who will provide the energy and athleticism and talent necessary to sort of help your key players who have to play a lot of minutes. So yeah, we will look to upgrade in that area with younger players and hope to find the Joel Anthonys of the world and Udonises, the Bruce Bowmans, all of those guys. We have a couple that we're excited about. We see how they pan out, but I don't think you win championships with young athletic players that don't have experience. And I think we've learned over the years that building with young players is very frustrating. And the only team that's really done, I think that through the draft is Oklahoma. They've done a great job, and they hit 2 home runs with Durant and with Westbrook. A couple of guys sort of came into their own, but that's a long process, and I don't think anybody here wants to wait any longer. So we will add players, to our team, young and experienced.
Chris had a lot of great moments this year. He also had some times where he expressed kind of frustration just with getting comfortable. What do you want to see from him this offseason, and what was your assessment of Chris's season?
I thought he was the perfect player for us all year. But he's, it's like he was judged, as was LeBron, as was Dwayne, as was the three. He was judged, about what he didn't do versus what he did do every night. And to have a big man that is that skilled, that can have, outrageous nights at both ends of the court. He's very smart. I think very even-tempered, and I think really sort of melded in, I think, perfectly. Now, he did express some frustration because that frustration probably came from, this is what I used to do when we got in this thing. When he was in Toronto, it was always him. And during the course of any game, whether LeBron is sitting next to you or Dwayne sitting next to you, he remembers that and wanted to go back to those old habits of give me the ball, let me dominate, and I'll win this game. And so we got through all of that stuff. And he's going to work hard on his body. He's going to continue to work on his body. He wants to get a little bit bigger, I think, get in the weight room. He's a power forward that's got great skill, and so the summer is going to be a summer of improvement for him.
Pat, you guys have the 31st pick in the draft. How much value is there in a second-round pick? And, the second-round picks on your roster, the undrafted free agents. Are you better off with the second-round pick? How much value do undrafted free agent better?
I think Chet, when Chet speaks to the draft, he will give you a better idea about that. Over the last couple of weeks in studying the players, in talking to somebody the other day, they said, I'd rather have 31 than 20. And for whatever reason, he said it, but not knowing what the rules are going to be, obviously, but having the first pick in the second round and not having to be encumbered by, guaranteed contract into a slot, that there's value there. So there are some very good players that we think, that are going to be there, that we're going to draft. And my take on it is that we're going to pick 31. I'm not so sure we're going to be, spending $3 million per transaction to move up to 20 when nobody wants 20. 21 or 22. So there's a lot of movement at the top of the draft. There's a lot of discussion about movement at the top of the draft. And I think teams are, at least my opinion, that teams are taking some of these lottery picks and money and turning them into veteran players, plus get another pick out of it. So I think they have seen what some teams have done in improving their team. They've done it with veterans, not just young players.
There was sort of a silly story that came out of New York that you told teams you're not going to trade a big three as if you were ever going to trade one of the big three. Was there ever a point during the season, between the 9 and 8, the rough start, where you might have said to yourself, but just in general, that depth of talent might be superior to three greatness, or was this from the get-go from last July, I am writing this out for a year, for 2 years, for 4 years, for whatever?
I never really thought about that at all. And what I'd like the big three to become are just players. Really, the big three. Players. Because there's 15 strong here. Go back to my old, maximum, but there was never any thought, never any discussion of moving any of those guys. And we're blessed to have them. I hope that we can have them here for a long time, and they can all retire here. So, but there was no discussion about that at all.
On that note, you guys had a big celebration before the season. I know it was for the season ticket holders and for fans, but is there any regret about the way that played nationally, and some of the way that was taken maybe by the national press, public?
I was trying to give Ken an analogy about that. The day that somebody asked my daughter, to marry him, she's going to have a bachelorette party. I hope it's not in Vegas. Those guys from Hangover. So you always have a pre-celebration to the celebration, right? And so, listen, we were so geeked about Dwayne and Chris is the party was planned for those two guys a couple of days before. Can you imagine when LeBron said, "I'm coming"? So, did we make mistakes along the way? Yes, probably. Probably put more pressure on them. Would they like to take back some of the words over the course of the season? Yes, but we can't. We don't have any regrets over it. We're going to leave that behind us. And but yeah, there were things we would probably, if we had a chance to really think about it and do it over again, may have done it a little bit differently. But that really was for our fans, and it got wonderfully out of hand. And how everybody covered it, they used it as a as an albatross, across their back.
Pat, along those lines, Chris said a lot of his frustration came from, he thought it was going to be a little bit easier. Maybe he thought in his mind it was going to be easier when they came together. Did you guys have any idea that it would be as tough, that you get such a, it would get...
Well, I think he knows now that it is not easy to win a championship. It's the hardest thing you're ever going to do, and there's a lot of disappointment. When you're going through it, when you actually go through it with a team that is expected to win, or you think can win, you always think the worst is going to happen to you. Against Philly, against Boston, against Chicago, against Dallas. And then finally one day you break through and you win one. So, but there was deep pain, deep disappointment on the part of all of our guys who felt when you get beat in the first round or the second round of the playoffs, sometimes going in, that's about what you have. And then, the next day or 2 days later, you have your exit meetings and everybody feels pretty good about themselves because now they think they can grow and get better. But when you go to the finals and lose in the finals, that is where the winning and misery separates itself, truly separates itself. So, and I think they'll remember that pain, that this is not easy, this is going to be hard. And do the things that you have to do to make sure you complete games and finish your series.
I have some quantifying reports which will be at your desk in the coming days, but there have been articles here and there about the impact on the business of basketball of this team, not just here, but all over the NBA, all over the world. Have you been able to kind of put your thumb on that and recognize how that explosion has impacted this team and then how it will affect things going forward?
That's not my part of the business, but there was, and I think you guys can probably speak to this better than I can, there was a tremendous amount of interest, in the NBA, in basketball, in basically what we did and what other teams wanted to do. The excitement of younger franchises that all of a sudden, came out of what people thought was nowhere, like Memphis, in Oklahoma, and it'll become very, very competitive. From that standpoint, this is a banner year in the NBA and globally and worldwide. Television ratings, season tickets, and sponsorships. The business is flourishing. So I think we had somewhat of a flashpoint in that because it did create a lot of interest on both sides of the spectrum, good and bad, but it created interest, and I think it created also that groundswell, ripple effect throughout the league. So don't want to stop it now.